Alternative Frequencies, the show that brings you what the other side has to say. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Alternative Frequencies, the supernatural in your living room. Of course, I'm your host, Stephen Hill. We've got a great show lined up for you this evening, some very interesting guests. Tony and Debra Pickman of the infamous Sallie House will be joining us just a little later on the program to talk about their experiences in one of the most haunted houses in the U.S. Well, I had a very busy weekend. I was invited to speak at the Dixie Ghostland Paracon in Aiken, South Carolina, and I had a great time and a great event. I got to see many old friends as well as make many new ones, and I'm happy to announce that because of this event, I am now represented by Haunted Entertainment, so perhaps you'll see me at an event near you soon. Of course, I'd like to give a big shout out to all the great folks over at the Hazy Radio Network and my UK affiliate, Birmingham City Radio. I'm so happy to be with you this evening. If you'd like to join us in the chat room, you can do so by going to hazyradio.com. Click on the on-air chat button, and you can join all the other alternative freaks right here in the chat room. Before we bring the Pikmans on, I'm going to share some files with you, and one talks about orbs. Now, in the paranormal field, some believe orbs are spirit energy. Others believe they are just specks of dust caught in the flash of our camera. We'll hear what the other side has to say right after this quick break, so please stick around. If you'd like to find out more about something unseen, you can do so by visiting Amazon. Check out The True Story of My Haunting, Something Unseen.
You're listening to Alternative Frequencies with host Stephen Hill. Now back to the show.
Now, the orb file that I wanted to share with you this evening. During all my years of spirit radio research, I've never heard them mention the word orbs. But in this file, which I'm going to play for you in just a second, they tell me, and as crazy as this may sound to you, that I mail orbs. They also refer to me as an author. So here's the file. See what you hear.
Life. Author. Mail.
Orbs. Now, as you can hear in that file, and I thought it was very unusual information that they were giving me here, they say in life, author, which I am a published author, you mail orbs. So I wanted to share that with you. I'll play it for you once again. It causes me to wonder, are all orbs just dust?
Life. Author. Mail.
Orbs. You know, the definition of an orb, according to Webster's American Dictionary, is a ball or sphere of light. So I hope I am mailing balls of light with my book. The next file I want to share with you this evening is kind of a humorous file, one I played at my presentation at the Dixie Ghostland Paracon this past weekend. And what the young lady had to say cracked me up. So Here it is. You can type in the chat room what you hear in this file. You can. Fart. On the
Many victim.
On the mini victim. That was pretty funny. So perhaps that's the cause of some of the anomalous smells, vaporous anomalies that many paranormal researchers and haunted homeowners report experiencing. Here it is once more. You can. Fart. On the
Many victim.
On the mini victim. That was pretty funny. Well, I hope that you enjoyed those files, as unusual as they are. And we're going to be right back with my special guests, Tony and Debra Pickman of the infamous Sallie House, right after this quick break. So please, don't go nowhere. The opinions and views expressed on this program may not necessarily be those of the Hazy Radio Network, Birmingham City Radio Network, its sponsors, affiliates, or those on the other side.
You're listening to Alternative Frequencies with host Stephen Hill. Now back to the show.
And we're back here live. If you're just tuning in, this is Alternative Frequencies. I'm your host, Stephen Hill, and I'm happy to bring on two people that I've really wanting to interview for a long time. Tony and Debra Pickman. Are you out there?
We're here. How you doing, Stephen?
Oh, I'm just doing great. Such a pleasure to have you on with us this evening, and thank you for taking your time to tell us your story.
Well, thank you for having us, too.
It was my pleasure, my pleasure. Debra, I was reading on your website, that is some scary, scary experiences that your family underwent there. And I just wanted to ask you, did you know that when you moved in about the activity in that house, or did it even exist before you moved in?
We didn't know it was inhabited before us as such. And it didn't come to light until after we lived there for a while and after our story actually went national with the sightings show that anybody had had any unexplained experiences. Nobody had experiences to any level compared to what, Tony and I had.
Wow. And as I understand, now, of course, folks, we're talking about the infamous Sallie House. As I understand it, this spirit was appearing to you as a child?
It didn't actually appear to me, but it interacted with me, and some of the activity depicted was interpreted by the medium that was brought in at one point that it was a child.
Well, perhaps I should have asked, did it present itself as a child instead of show itself? But so what did you think when you found out your house was indeed haunted by what presented itself as a child?
As a spirit child, I thought this could be really interesting, and I think that being a new mother myself, I welcomed it with open arms as a child, and went with, that whole trying to understand it and help it kind of theory. But Tony had a totally different experience from what I had had.
Yeah, I was just the opposite. Just the idea of having a ghost pretty much scared me, and it actually did show itself to me on 2 different occasions as a little girl, and it just really, really creeped me out.
Well, Tony, I know from experience that some spirits feed off fear, especially the darker ones. Mm-hmm. Now, do you think she was picking up on your fear, knowing that you were afraid of the activity?
I think it did quite a bit. It was actually really what I know now. I know a lot more now about hauntings than I did then, but I've come to understand that they're intelligent hauntings or smart hauntings, and this was definitely one because it really could pick up on your whole thought patterns. I mean, it could use your fear against you and all that. So it was quite an awakening.
Now, of course, I know that you were affected in a very negative way by this spirit. When did the haunting or activity begin to take a darker turn?
I think probably
maybe 9-10 months or so. But I didn't recognize it quite as such because it wasn't happening to me.
It was probably, I'd say, around 9 months after we moved in. I started. It kind of started with the scratching in the walls. There was in our master bedroom for me. I would constantly, if I went to lay down here, scratching in the walls, and a lot of whispering. It would sound like several people trying to talk to me at one time, and I could never understand what they were saying. But it would get really loud. And it was probably around that time when I would say the scratching began, and just little things like pushing or severe dreams, really, really bad nightmares.
Wow. I think they can affect our dreams, and it's a very scary experience when you first realize that it's something you can't seem to get away from in your own house.
Exactly. You feel totally helpless.
I felt the same way when my journey began, and I was sleeping with the lights on. And have you ever slept with the lights on while I've got you here?
I still do. I still have I still keep the TV on or something. I have to have some kind of noise just to keep my mind from thinking about it.
Wow, I'm sure that was very traumatic. Now, I know that at one point the child will say, and I know everyone calls her Sallie, she decided that she was going to inflict some pain on you, and those were the scratches.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw your episode, forget what channel, maybe it's on The Haunted, but I saw the scratches appear on your back, right there on camera. I don't see any way that could be a good thing. I just came up in whelps, and actually, if I remember correctly, I saw some blood there as well.
Yeah, it started out as a welt, and I think I think they kept the camera on it for like 10 minutes, and blood started coming from it. And it varied. Sometimes it would just be there. A lot of times I didn't even realize I'd been scratched until somebody pointed it out. There was a time in particular when Carrie Gaynor, a really well-known paranormal researcher, was there, and they were doing some filming, and he was sitting probably not even a foot away from me, and I had my shirt off, I was kind of the guinea pig that night, and scratches just started appearing out of the blue. I think we ended up with 11 separate attacks, and it was just crazy what he was.
Man, I just have to ask you, do you think maybe Sallie was showing off for the camera that night? Because during that TV episode, she really scratched you up pretty good. Do you think she was just showing off, showing everybody that, hey, this is real, and I can do this?
Whatever this spirit was, and in the reference that we have now and the experience that we've gained since living in that house, we know it wasn't a little girl spirit. But yes, it was showing off and letting everybody know that it was capable of things that we could not control.
Wow. I had a question from the chat room, and the question is, did the negativity ever cause any anger between you as a family or play on your emotions in your daily lives?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
We had arguing all the time, especially when sightings wanted to come up and try something different and explain the situation or find help in the situation. We fought like cats and dogs. My experience was so different than what Tony was experiencing, and I wasn't understanding what he was experiencing. We argued about it all the time. I thought it was, a good little spirit, and he was, of the mind that it absolutely was not.
Yeah, if this thing could scratch me and cause him, harm, I just couldn't see. It just didn't seem like something that a sweet little girl would be doing. It just didn't seem right.
Absolutely, it didn't seem right. And, I've, in my time in the paranormal, I've recorded many children's voices. Now, some would say that those are all demonic entities acting as children to gain your trust. Now, based on your experience, what's your view, Deborah, on children spirits? Do you think they're all dark entities parading around as children, mimicking children on our voice recorders, or do you think there are children spirits that linger on in the next life?
I think when we're dealing with spirit and it presents as a child, you have to be very, very careful, because it's very easy. It's the easiest way to win, our hearts, a child in trouble, and to gain confidence. I do believe that there are children's spirits out there, but I also know that they can be used as a shield to protect or hide whatever wants to control them or you.
Well, I would have to agree with that. The chat room's just lighting up with questions. You'll have to forgive me, I'm a little bit hoarse this evening. But I had a question from Tabby, and she wanted me to ask you if some of the details in your dreams actually came true, if they actually happened. And so, if that was so, the dreams could be interpreted as premonitions.
Yeah, there was I tell you one in particular was there was a night I kept dreaming that it was the second time I saw the little girl. She was standing by my side of the bed, and she kept reaching towards my arm, like she was trying to pull me towards her. And every time she'd reach at me, I would just, it scared me, so I'd pull away. And I just kept backing up in bed, and I think about the third time she reached for me, and I pulled back, she just turned into this, it's hard to describe, it's just a hideous creature, and let out this roar or growl at me, and I just froze. At the time, it seemed so real, but I wasn't sure if it was a dream or not. I told Deb about it because I woke her up, kind of startled and stuff, and we went back to sleep. The next morning, when I woke up, I had burn marks across my wrist, as if it probably the size of a little girl's hand across my wrist. They were really welted up and blistered. So
now, burn marks?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, what degree of a burn would you?
It was probably, I would say, a good second degree. It blistered.
Wow. Now that's scary.
Yeah, it was.
Out comes the holy water if that happens around here. I keep something in a spray bottle just in case. Don't know if that'd do any good, but it'd make me feel better.
I hear you.
But I had another question in the chat room. That's a great thing about this show. The listeners get to interview you just like I do, and I ask their questions.
Right.
What the question was, let me scroll up here and get it. It wasn't
about
that one.
imitating voices?
Yes.
We had several EVPs with the team that we used to go in and investigate with. Probably 10 years after we moved out, we started going back, and many times they imitated Tony's voice or another investigator's voice, even to the point of doing it backwards.
I've had my voice imitated on a EVP in a cemetery. I thought when I listened back to it I was mumbling and discarded it the first time I heard it, and then I listened again and I said, well, wait a minute, I didn't say that. And I was standing in a Korean War veteran's grave, and the EVP said in my voice, you're playing, Colonel. Same accent and everything. Flipped me out. The questions are rolling in the chat room. Have you ever had tried to cleanse that house or have someone cleanse the house like a priest?
We did try to have a cleansing one time. It was a friend of someone that was in the sidings crew, and he came back later and talked about how horrible they felt in the house and that they did cleansings, and it was actually a shaman. And one more she'd come back that night and do a cleansing. And we agreed, and we sat at the top of the stairs in a circle and held hands and proceeded to do this cleansing, but it just it really felt like somebody was just pummeling my back. The pain got too severe that we ended up having to cut it short, and I ended up with black and blue marks all over my back and really
a lot of scratches across the shoulder area, which, there are photos of that cleansing is actually on our website in our photo gallery, if anybody wanted to take a look at that, and that's at theSallieHouse.com.
That is an interesting website, Deborah. I really enjoyed reading there. And you are a published author, and tell everyone the name of your book and where they could get it while I'm on that subject.
The Sallie House haunting, a true story, was written in more of a chronological order. So those wanting to understand the experience can kind of see how it built over the years or months and how things changed. They can be kind of like that little fly on the wall, privy to our conversations and our arguments and our inner thoughts and feelings about the situations that we were encountering. And it can be bought on, Amazon and, every other place out there. Our website, every copy that's sold is signed and is sent out with bonus material. So if that's something that you're looking for, be sure to stop by the website. There's a link straight at the top of the page.
Well, that is great. And I'm definitely going to get that book, and if I dare to read it, because just from what you have written there, kind of like a little history of the house and that haunting, again, that's some very, very scary things. I saw on a website one time a group of ghost investigators posted, how do you know when you're dealing with the demonic? And one of the things that they had listed there, if it can lift more than 10 pounds. Well, Tony, I want you to tell us a story about when you went back to the house and what happened to you.
Yeah. I had stayed away for like 10 years. In fact, I wouldn't even drive by the house. We moved out, and Deb had gotten to know a group that, was coming to town investigating the house, and they had started picking up several EVPs of all kinds of things. It kind of had me, I thought, well, maybe there are trap ghosts and stuff in the house. And, I wanted to spend some time with Deb, and I'd made friends with this group too, so I went back in the house back in 2007.
Well, before that.
Yeah, for several months.
He started going back probably in late 2005. And the first couple times he went in, he didn't stay very long. And it was more of probably a test. And after probably the third trip, there were no more, even faint scratches or burns or anything like that. And he was actually able to spend as long as he wanted during that investigation at the house. He felt real comfortable there.
We ended up going back in 2007, and we'd gone in earlier in the day, and things, felt pretty light in the house. We kind of went around, did some EVPs and stuff, and we came home and we went through some of that, and we decided to go back that evening. And we probably weren't in the house 10 minutes, and we'd gone upstairs. Deb was in the master bedroom smudging, and I was just kind of walking around with the camera taking pictures, and I'd stepped into the master bedroom with Deb, and I just got an immense feeling. I was dizzy, just super sick to my stomach. I felt like I was going to pass out, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up on the ground, and it felt like a 3 linebackers just hit me in broadside. And I don't remember much of that trip because I think it literally knocked me unconscious because I really don't remember much. Deb could probably take it from there and tell you more.
It was, not quite out of the corner of my eye. I had more visual on him than that. Mm-hmm. But he was still at my side, and I had just turned around to ask him something. And had I not seen it with my own eyes, I'm a kind of a person before I just believe something. But he actually lifted up off the floor a foot, and this happened in like a matter of split seconds. And he lifted up off the floor and then just moved backwards against the wall with such force. It was so quick. I can't even visualize what would have done that to him. And then he just kind of slid down the door and laid there. But I mean, this was a force to reckon with, and it pinned him on the floor.
I can imagine what did it.
His neck, as he was trying to get up. I mean, he couldn't move.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I remember at that point coming to and trying to get up, and it felt like, an elephant on top of me. It literally felt like something had me by the shoulders and setting on my chest. I couldn't get up. Luckily, one of our investigators with us came around the corner and yelled, "In the name of God, let him go." And she did that twice, and the second time it quit, and we didn't hesitate. We basically went out of the house, and I haven't been back since. This thing hit me with enough force. I had laced up steel-toed work boots on, and it left my work boots where I was standing, and I was probably 4 foot away from the wall when I woke up.
Wow. Yeah, I've got an idea of what could do that. Something that can lift more than 10 pounds, to be exact.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying their analysis is right. I don't know how much a spirit can lift, but that sounds like inhuman to me. And while we're on the subject, you said the investigator, shouted, "In the name of God," let him up. Has this changed your views on religion?
It has brought us, I was always I was brought up, Roman Catholic and everything, so I always believed in God and everything, but it has so made my faith stronger. Because I thank God every day now that we made it out alive, basically. And it's really changed our faith a lot. I think it's probably helped Deb the most.
I was born baptized Catholic, but had stepped away from the church for various reasons over the years. I mean, I'm 50 now, and it's taken this long for me to see that God definitely has a purpose in our life, and He does keep us safe. Because had it not been for the prayer and the definite experiences of His intervention in situations that we've been in, not just in this house, but in some of our other investigations, it's remarkable that when you can call on Him and He's there, and He's there, it's an amazing revelation. It really is.
Well, as in my story, when I first got into the paranormal by accident, I was kind of driven into it, but, it changed my religious beliefs, or it changed my view, and greatly differed from what I'd been taught in the Presbyterian faith. But it did bring me closer to God, because I always tell everyone, and I'm an empath, not a priest, but whether we believe in God, heaven, hell, Satan, angels, demons, ghosts, all of the above, the ones on the other side certainly do, because they mention them all the time. So I think it did bring me much closer to God, because I had to rely, as you did, on Him for strength, because who else do you turn to? And again, I'm not a preacher, but I'm just very thankful that I saw that was my way to endure what I went through. And it wasn't anything as violent or as scary as what you've experienced, but it was spooky to me. And I almost felt like I was ashamed at the beginning, like scared to tell anyone. It's like, what have I done to bring this on myself? What have I done wrong? And did you have any of those feelings when it first started?
I used to ask myself that all the time. There were so many unanswered questions. Why was I the one scratched and having so much of the hurtful stuff happen to her? And I pondered about everything I can think of, and I can't give a definite answer. It still puzzles me, but
Well, that's a tough question, I guess. And but if you study the history of the house, you knew there was some kind of activity before you moved in, correct? You just didn't know, I believe Debra did say she didn't think it was inhabited. So I was just wondering, there was a question in the chat room, the history of the house.
Once we had the incident where all the bears kind of positioned themselves in the middle of the nursery floor, and all of us, the three of us, coming to the conclusion that yes, we had some sort of spirit activity in the house, I did embark on a lot of research at the public library and such. Unfortunately, there's some missing records because of the flood of 58. There were 2 floods of 58 mattresses, so we lost a lot of records. But I do know that the history, I know a doctor lived there. I know that the family was a little eccentric, or a couple of the family members were a little eccentric. It didn't seem like too many people, died in the house, but the land, there always seemed to be turmoil with the land. The Pomeroys that originally settled the land actually had a legal battle over the land. Then there was the Finney family, 2 doctors there, and they were the eccentric ones. The Anderson family, I think, was the family who lived in the house probably a year and a half to 2 years before we did. And when they were younger, Mrs. Anderson, her husband was a doctor. And at some point, it was just her in the house, and her daughter and her daughter's children moved into the house. So she had quite a full house. And it was brought to our attention, well after the fact that we were experiencing what we were experiencing, that there was an unexplained fire in the nursery. Also, the woman who rented the house just before we moved in came to meet me at my front door after the first sightings episode aired, and they had mentioned the name Sallie. Apparently her daughter, who was about 7 at the time, I want to say, had talked and expressed that she had a friend named Sallie, and had, when the toys were all over the room, and Mom said, you need to clean that up. She said, I didn't do it, Sallie did it. So beyond that kind of history, we've never really come to know any recordable events or even documented a Sallie or Sarah being related to anybody in the house, or living in the house, or dying in the house. So there's really no validation for this little Sallie spirit.
Wow. Someone sent me a private message just now in chat and said that she was hearing, voices and what sounded to be the static here on the broadcast. And that happens quite often on the show here. Has that ever happened on other shows you've appeared on?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say that we just had the loudest June bug bounce around the ceiling around the light as I was talking.
Well, the only person in the room with me is my dog Cruiser, and if you hear any snoring, he's on the bed asleep. So I'm sure it wasn't him, but yes, I did a show just a few weeks back, and where I took like 3 different what I call spirit breakthroughs. Some of them on phone, one of them was on Skype, and I find that very interesting. And every time I'm talking to someone that's experienced a haunting or maybe a clairvoyant, these things seem to happen. But do either one of you consider yourself to have any clairvoyant ability?
I've kind of come to find out that, yeah, I have a little bit, and I think that's maybe, or as I guess they would like to call it, sensitive. That could be one reason it focused on me so much. I think it was able to use my energy a little bit more than it could Deb, or at least able to get to me.
Or at least gravitate through his energy, thinking it could get a message through to him, or, somehow communicate whatever it needed to through him. Or, just hone in on his energy and use it.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing with me, and what I do, I'm kind of an electronic medium, and they use my energy, and it's draining sometimes. People don't realize when they use your energy how draining it can be. Now, have you ever experienced in that house, this is just a general paranormal research question, have you ever experienced like severe battery drain from your group's equipment or your equipment, or perhaps even just day-to-day life there?
I don't want to say too much in day-to-day light, except for like dimming of the light switches in the living room. But I know that when the investigative teams came, between the batteries on their cameras, their big TV cameras, their still cameras and such, there was a lot of battery drain.
Yeah, I've experienced that many times, and I think they use our energy and any other energy that's available. But the teddy bears piled up in the middle of the room, now that sounds to me like poltergeist activity.
Right. It's really interesting how what we were experiencing kind of seemed to cross into several different areas of the paranormal. Some, being poltergeist, some being haunted, some being demonic activity, all at the same time. So it was not only a very interesting case to look into and research, over the years and, for investigators to this day, but also very difficult to try and pinpoint what exactly was going on and why.
Well, have you ever had, and we're going to take a quick break in just a second, but have you ever had, other than the time Tony got thrown against the wall, knocked out of his boots, have you ever had a group come in and be belligerent or provoking to the spirits? And if so, what happened?
A number of things, everything from us being here at our house being scratched to we actually, one night where I was sitting in the living room, me and my boys, and Deb was in the dining room, and something came from our kitchen just flying by and scraped across my chest and hit the wall. Really fast. The
only reason we knew anything happened is because the curtain next to the chair he was sitting in it looked like somebody threw like a baseball at it. It hit and dropped. And you hear the drop and nothing, went flying through the air, but upon looking, there was a 10-inch knife. The blade on the knife was 10-inch plus the handle.
Wow.
And the shirt that Tony was wearing was cut right across the chest, and he had a superficial cut across underneath the shirt.
Wow. Now, that is scary. Something throwing knives. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more questions from the chat room and with Tony and Debra Pickman of the Sallie House. So please, don't go nowhere.
You're listening to Alternative Frequencies with host Stephen Hill. Now back to the show.
And we're back here live. Thanks for sticking around during that short break. And we're with Tony and Debra Pickman of the infamous Sallie House. And we've got a question in the chat room from Frank, and he wants to know, was anyone able to verify the identity of the apparitions that were seen in the home by viewing photographs of the previous inhabitants of the home, if you follow me there?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of the records, newspapers, and such were lost in the records that were lost in the flood of '58. The few that we have got are of the Finney family, and nothing is anything like what Tony saw or drew of what he saw of the apparition.
And we tried, because it often went through my mind, did I resemble somebody that made someone mad in the house? So it was really, I really wanted to find, something. Maybe there was a photograph of somebody that, I resembled or something. But we never did find anything.
Well, that was a great question, too, by the way. A great idea. And I'm sure you did try to find any identities. Did you ever get any other names or any of the other groups that have investigated? Have they gotten any names other than Sallie?
I know the group that we did a lot of investigating with, Kansas Paranormal Group, they went in multiple times through the years, and they had a wonderful research person, Jennifer, who, through Ancestry, she did some remarkable work. And some of the EVP kind of crossed with the historical records that she was finding. And it is believed that Joanna Barnes, who actually was a person who lived next door, just south of the Sallie House, seems to be the matriarchal spirit of the house.
Okay.
And I want to say that just below whatever dark spirit is actually there.
So you think there's someone in charge?
There is definitely a very strong and dark force there, yes.
We know someone once entertained a theory with me, and I don't know if it's true, that dark entities, or we'll call them demonics, can bring human spirits into an environment, and it somehow has control of them and uses them as we would use batteries for energy.
Well, I want to agree with a good portion of that. I don't think that the spirits that are in that house were necessarily brought in by the dark force, because I think we each travel with spirits, and exactly. I think that, once they're in the house, it's very difficult for a lot of them to release the house or be released from the house. And I do think that dark entity that's in there kind of capitalizes on what energy they have about them.
I know. In my situation, Stephen, I had seen the little girl first, and it seemed like, being a man, you think, okay, this guy's not going to be scared. This little girl spirit was an easy way to win him over. And it was just the opposite. Just the idea of a ghost scared me. So, and when that didn't work, it seemed to take the appearance. I believe I saw the apparition of what looked like Debra, that she would be dressed in 18th century type clothing. Pretty soon it started taking on the appearance of this really older, grouchy woman. And that's when things really started getting out of hand. And when that apparition stopped showing itself, it was like no holds barred. It didn't care anymore. It just wanted to hurt. And it didn't have to show itself. And it just got physical.
Has it ever harmed you, Debra?
No. Like I said, it was, I think its goal originally was to be accepted and, gain control over us. And with me, I think being a new mom, it was easy for me to accept, this little spirit girl and open my arms to her, It had wrapped me around its fingers first off. I'd always been interested in the paranormal and thought, wow, what an experience. And so it kind of set off to conquer and divide Tony and I at that point, I think, because the more it couldn't get to Tony, the more it tried to drive a wedge between us. It was very smart. and very, what do I want to say?
Well, I think that it really had a goal to, and I've seen it with other investigators and teams and countless people who've gone in there. It really tries to destroy anything good or any type of love, and it really felt like it just wants to wreak havoc on relationships with anything you can do to destroy anything good. That's what it felt like.
Well, I guess one.
The investigative groups that go in there don't survive. They break up. They have serious medical issues. We've had people flipping their cars on the way home and the hoods of their car flying up over their windshield. I mean, significant, odd things go on. Not to mention the very dark dreams and the change of mood swings and the suicidal thoughts. It's amazing how many emails we get all the time from people who've been to the house and now feel that they're in trouble or threatened.
Well, that's spirit oppression, and I've experienced it myself, and I've been on several cases where the clients, or I won't call them clients because I don't charge them, but where the homeowners have called me in, and it's like the black cloud syndrome. Like a black cloud just follows them around, just like you were saying. Nothing goes right. They get depressed, lose their jobs. So yeah, I can understand that totally. I guess before we run out of time here, we only have a few more minutes, is the question I would have to ask you, and probably one that someone would ask me as well. When all this activity began, why did you stay there?
Well, we were a young couple at that time. We just had a baby. We just basically sunk all of our money into moving into the house, buying, curtains and everything to furnish the house the way it needed to be, baby stuff for the house, deposits for all the utilities. I mean, we were pretty much, living penny to penny and week to week, and couldn't afford another move. And, I was interested in the paranormal. I thought, oh, cool experience. And unfortunately for Tony, he let me indulge and thought that, giving me that opportunity would be, nice.
And also, like you had mentioned, Stephen, that when you're in a situation like this, oppression, I tell you, you don't think straight.
You don't. That's true.
I literally felt like something was taking me over. And there was times in the house that I just was not myself. I felt like a totally bad person in the house. I couldn't think of a good thought. And I think it just really keeps you trapped.
It does. And to answer the same question on my end, the reason I stayed, number one, is I own this place, and number two, I had to sell it to move, and number two, I was told not too long after my experiences began here that you can move all you want to. It's not the house, it's you. You're a haunted person.
Mm-hmm. And, well, it can be a place haunting or a people haunting.
Right, so I didn't think moving would do any good, and that's why I stayed. And but y'all have been great guests. Such a pleasure to have you on here with me. Been looking forward to this for a long time. And I just want to thank you. I know the listeners really enjoyed this show. And I can tell when they're interested because they're asking questions and talking about the subject. And,
right, you're not off topic.
Right. And
we've enjoyed talking with you, Stephen.
Yeah, great time.
Thank you, guys. And we'll have to have you back on again.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, you take care and have a pleasant evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Well, guys, that was Tony and Debra Pickman of the infamous Sallie House, and they were great guests. I feel like I've known them for years, and I appreciate each and every one of you, especially those in the chat room, for tuning in and helping me interview them. And we will see you next week. has been Alternative Frequencies. If you'd like to sponsor the show by advertising your service or event, contact stallturn4@gmail.com. That's STALLTURN4@gmail.com. Until next week,